Here we are back together again, friends, for another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.
Hi, I'm Jane. I live in DC and I've been a type 1 diabetic for about 3 years. I am 36 now, but I suppose I was 32 when I was diagnosed, but just so right around maybe 3.5 years. But there was actually a window where I was considered not diabetic.
The podcast contains so many different series and collections of information that it can be difficult to find them in your traditional podcast app sometimes. That's why they're also collected at juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up to the top. There's a menu right there. Click on Series. Defining Diabetes, Bold Beginnings, the Pro Tip Series, Small Sips, Omnipod 5, Ask Scott and Jenny, Mental Wellness, Fat and Protein, Defining Thyroid, After Dark, Diabetes Variables, Grand Rounds, Cold Wind, Pregnancy, Type 2 Diabetes, GLP Meds, The Math Behind Diabetes, Diabetes Myths, and so much more. You have to go check it out. It's all there and waiting for you, and it's absolutely free. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is brought to you by my favorite diabetes organization, Touched by Type 1. Please take a moment to learn more about them at touchedbytype1.org on Facebook and Instagram. touchedbytype1.org. Check out their many programs, their annual conference, awareness campaign, their D-Box program, Dancing for Diabetes. They have a dance program for local kids, a golf night, and so much more. touchedbytype1.org. You're looking to help, or you want to see people helping people with type 1? You want touchedbytype1.org. I'm having an on-body vibe alert. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense 365, the only one-year wear CGM. That's one insertion and one CGM a year. One CGM, 1 year. Not every 10 or 14 days. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. This episode is sponsored by the Tandem Mobi system, which is powered by Tandem's newest algorithm, Control-IQ Plus technology. Tandem Mobi has a predictive algorithm that helps prevent highs and lows and is now available for ages 2 and up. Learn more and get started today at tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox.
Hi, I'm Jane. I live in DC and I've been a type 1 diabetic for about 3 years.
No kidding. How old are you?
I am 36 now, but I suppose I was 32 when I was diagnosed, but just so right around maybe 3.5 years. But there was actually a window where I was considered not diabetic. So we can get into that.
Wait, so you're going to try to tell me that something happened? People are like, you don't have diabetes, but you did?
Oh, exactly. And to complicate it out, I'm a physician assistant and I've been in ER medicine for 8 years. And so I, have been treating type 1 diabetics and DKA mostly for the better part of my career. And so, yeah, it was a whole ride to become type 1 after them being my patients.
I realized I giggled in a weird spot for people, but like my mind always races ahead to like where you're going to just be like, yeah, I don't know, Scott. Like I've seen it 800,000 times, but when I had it, I didn't notice it at all or something like that. But we'll get to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how about in your family? Any other autoimmune stuff?
No, not a single thing. Not anyone. And my family is very large, or my extended family is large.
No
and
kidding.
Nobody.
And do you have kids?
I do. I have 2 kids. And I actually was pregnant when I found out I was a type 1 diabetic.
Really?
Yes. So that I actually have never yet been diabetic without breastfeeding or being pregnant. So the entire 3.5 years I have been a type 1 diabetic, I have either been pregnant or breastfeeding. So it makes it really hard to know my baseline, essentially, which is really important when you're diabetic.
See, that makes it really hard. And what I'm thinking is, well, when the breastfeeding's over, you're going to be like, wow, why is this so easy?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. So. I'm just like, man, what it would be like to be a male being diabetic, because you don't have to worry about the hormones, the up and down. So yeah. I know, who knows how long that'll take, but
I would have to say, if you made me pick, I'd say boy type 1, probably a little easier. Although in that growing time, like for the parents who are listening right now, I'm like, oh, you never saw my son come home from soccer practice and, eat everything.
Totally. That would be hard.
Listen, here's what I'll tell you. I think you just prefer not to have type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't think we need to start going, which one's got it harder?
Totally.
But the hormonal thing is crazy. Breastfeeding, I know from people, tough on you, right? Like your body's constantly making stuff. You're burning calories. Like I've seen, sorry, I've heard conversations from people where women are like, I'm eating like Kind bars while the breastfeeding's happening, trying to keep my blood sugar up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay. So what was your first sign of like any kind of illness?
Yeah. I was about 28 weeks pregnant with my first child, a girl. And I went in for my glucose tolerance test, as you do between the window of like 24 and 28 weeks. And I just happened to hit it on the later side. And I failed spectacularly. I was working in the ER when I got a call from the OBGYN office. And I actually was with the midwives at my program. I went to GW or PA school, George Washington University. I live in DC. And they have a really good midwife program. And I was, low risk. I, wasn't yet a geriatric pregnancy and I had no health conditions. And so I was like, I loved the midwives from learning, working there. And at one point they were like, we're going to have to kick you off of our program because your glucose came back at 267. I think I was like in the ER and I was just kind of stunned. And I went over to my coworkers and I was like, my glucose is 267. Like I've never checked my glucose in my life. Like I think I had blood work maybe like once or twice before then. I was not somebody, maybe like most healthcare providers who ever like actually went to the doctor, but I didn't really have a reason to. And everyone was like, okay, this is gestational diabetes. You have it really hard. Because I think at first I was like, well, should I take it again and like make sure it's right? And they're like, well, with how badly that number looks, we don't think you need to take it again. And then like sunk in. I was like, yeah, you're right.
Isn't it funny how quickly you become a patient? Like, because if you gave me a glucose tolerance test and it came back 267, I said, we should do it again. That's probably not right. You go, shut up.
Even though, yeah, exactly. As a provider who tells people frequently they have diabetes, I know a spot check, over 200 for probably my non-diabetic friends who might listen to this, just automatically means you have diabetes.
Jane, stay in this space for a second with me, right? Like, what do you think cognitively happened to you when someone gave you that number?
I think I was thinking, wow, pregnancy's nuts. Man, is my placenta just hate me? Or what's happening? I've never heard of gestational diabetes being this severe unless you're already close to being pre-diabetic and this just flips you more so into it.
So ergo, I must have type 1. Right?
I was actually, no, I thought I had gestational because I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I'll get to, how I eventually was had to prove it to everyone that I had type 1, which was a fight. I was just okay, I just have one of the more crazy gestational diabetic presentations than I've heard of. And so what I was told then by the midwife program was we'll need to get you in with the maternal fetal medicine specialists because now you're high risk being a gestational diabetic. And here's your instructions. Add protein, exercise, and, don't eat sugar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate all your help. Feel free to bill my insurance for that.
Yes, exactly. And I and they're we'll set you up with a nutritionist, which is, interesting because I am generally, a pretty healthy person. I love to run. I have been extremely athletic generally and eat very well at baseline. So when they're telling me this, they don't know me over the phone. I think they're just yeah. I even had somebody who I was trying to talk to say, well, I bet you were pretty diabetic beforehand. And this just you probably would have gotten type 2 diabetes pretty soon, anyway, with these numbers.
Who said that to you?
It was actually a nurse practitioner at a clinic that I went to who I really do respect the clinic, one medical clinic. And I've considered writing a note to them after this all when.
I want you to ponder this thought for later, okay? Because I'm not going to ask it to you now. I just want you to ponder it as you're talking.
Yes.
Do you see not just the community of medical people differently today, but do you see actual people that you work with differently?
100%.
Yeah, 100%. But I want to know how. It literally is for at the end of the conversation. It's going to be the last thing I ask you.
Okay. Yes.
So I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So I was okay, my instructions were meet with a nutritionist and I was okay, well, I don't know how much I could be doing it better. That's cocky of me, and I realize now I didn't know what I knew about what I thought I knew about nutrition then. So I've come a long way as well with protein and my protein first, carbs second. I didn't know that stuff. I didn't, nor did I need to, ahead of time. But I was I'm generally pretty good on my diet. Like, I don't know how much I can diet more, but I was like, I'll meet with this nutritionist. I got my A1C back because then they were like, go ahead and go do some tests. And I actually don't think it was that bad initially because it was like, once again, it was like right after I got tested. I think it was like 7.6.
Okay.
Which, it's just definitely like, okay, that's diabetic. But I was like, had no clue what my base. I'd never gotten my A1C tested before.
Had you felt off in any other way in the 6 weeks prior? This episode is sponsored by Tandem Diabetes Care. And today I'm going to tell you about Tandem's newest pump and algorithm. The Tandem Mobi system with Control-IQ Plus technology features auto bolus, which can cover missed meal boluses and help prevent hyperglycemia. It has a dedicated sleep activity setting and is controlled from your personal iPhone. Tandem will help you to check your benefits today through my link, tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox. This is going to help you to get started with Tandem's smallest pump yet, that's powered by its best algorithm ever. Control-IQ Plus technology helps to keep blood sugars in range by predicting glucose levels 30 minutes ahead, and it adjusts insulin accordingly. You can wear the Tandem Mobi in a number of ways. Wear it on body with a patch-like adhesive sleeve that is sold separately, clip it discreetly to your clothing, or slip it into your pocket. Head now to my link, tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox to check out your benefits and get started today. When you think of a CGM and all the good that it brings in your life, is the first thing you think about, I love that I have to change it all the time? I love the warm-up period every time I have to change it. I love that when I bump into a door frame, sometimes it gets ripped off. I love that the adhesive kind of gets mushy sometimes when I sweat and falls off. No, these are not the things that you love about a CGM. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Eversense 365, the only CGM that you only have to put on once a year, and the only CGM that won't give you any of those problems. The Eversense 365 is the only one-year CGM designed to minimize device frustration. It has exceptional accuracy for 1 year with almost no false alarms from compression lows while you're sleeping. You can manage your diabetes instead of your CGM with the Eversense 365. Learn more and get started today at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. 1 year, one CGM.
Well, yes, I look back, but the whole story for me being so a little bit gaslighting myself in some ways, I had never been pregnant before and I had no idea what pregnancy was like, So I felt weird, but like for instance, going through pregnancy, I kind of expected getting pregnant. Like I said, I'm an active person. I'm pretty lean, but I thought when I got pregnant, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be probably so pregnant. My ears will be pregnant. My toes will be pregnant. My lips will be pregnant. I will look pregnant, And I remember weighing in and being like, I'm not gaining enough weight. This is weird. This is just not what I expected.
Not even a happily, look at me lean and pregnant, but maybe something's wrong.
Yeah. I don't think, I was just like, wow, my body is doing the opposite of kind of what I thought. How often do you see people look a little gaunt while they're pregnant?
I could probably have 20 babies.
Or just up until that point, probably the first 6 months, pretty normal. And then I started going down the scale and my weigh-in was I'd only gained 10 pounds at 28 weeks pregnant from when I was pre-pregnant.
No one waves a flag for that?
Yeah, exactly. My doctor said by now I was in the maternal fetal medicine at GW. It is a great program, but I don't think they know what to do with me because I went from being super healthy to being okay, this is just weird. But he had been you need to eat more, but then also eat less. You need to eat more, but I would bring, my husband is very into Excel. I started finger pricking, being gestational. And after, I'll eventually get back to what the nutritionist told me and why I kind of thought I flipped into type 1. But he tracked everything I ate and all of my blood glucose readings. And I was I know what this means for the baby. I know with my medical background, which is, I think, it was helpful in so many ways. I don't know if I would be alive or I at least would have gone to the ICU if I didn't have my background from how it went for me. Everyone assuming this was gestational,
Yeah.
He had a whole, everything in Excel, and I brought it to my doctor, and I was just I'm eating eggs only, and my glucose is over 200. Eggs only. I don't have, anything else. And I'll spot check, and it'll be 203, 206. And, you can look, and I think only because I had it all tracked out. And that was, I think, my second visit. Because at first, I was being told,
Gestational.
okay, you're not getting enough weight. You should eat more. But then I would, message in being like, well, my blood sugar is like super high. And he's like, okay, you need to eat less meals, like a little bit less. And I was like, you don't understand. I could not possibly be eating less.
Also, could you stop saying competing things to me? That's really, upsetting.
Yeah. And I was like, I am eating like a rabbit at this point because I'm so worried about my blood sugar. Yeah. And I think he was just like, okay, that maybe explains the weight loss in some way, Like somehow your glucose is really, really high, yet you're trying to eat a lot less.
Somehow, let's think. How could that be? Let's think about it.
Yeah. And it's just so weird. I don't know a single other person that has ever gotten type 1 while they're pregnant.
Oh, please. Let me just tell you, I know 20 people from making this podcast, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah. And I've listened to some of them, but I just mean like in my personal life, I hadn't at the time. And then, so actually when I was meeting with my nutritionist, who was very, very sweet, who just kept going, oh dear. Like every time I'd say something, she'd be like, oh dear. And I'd be like, could this be related to COVID? And this was in 2021. Mm-hmm. I was in healthcare, so I had gotten the vaccine December of 2020, like right when it came out. And I hadn't managed to not have gotten COVID until August 2021 when Delta was kind of on rampage. My symptoms and like the glucose tolerance test happened to be 4 weeks later. Technically, when you would think maybe a virus flipped you into type 1 with the time frame, kind of.
It's plausible,
Yeah. I just had COVID for the first time a month ago. It was so mild. I basically had the sniffles. And I just was wondering about the time frame because I was like something, and it was the first time, and I started looking up data on if COVID caused any links with gestational diabetes because I knew it was making diabetes a lot harder to treat and doing things to my diabetic patients. And I was like, could it potentially make somebody who might not have been like? And I didn't really gestational diabetes, is its own thing for anyone who doesn't know. It's like the placenta is what is theoretically causing the insulin resistance. And ideally, once you like birth the placenta, your body goes back to normal. You don't have diabetes anymore. So that was the assumption. She was like, I have no idea, but I'm going to try to figure that out for you. And so we looked up some things and it was just very new. Nobody had really.
I was going to say you're in the middle of it. It's not exactly full of answers at that
point.
And
I just can't wait for 10 years from now for like more things to come out on this because like since then I have learned about the association, and I'm curious to know if you have with COVID and type 1 diabetes, specifically when pregnant, because I have like, through Reddit and other Facebook groups and even like some friends of friends have, and I don't know if this matches like a regular percent of like people, but like them having, no family history or anything and getting COVID and within a month becoming type 1 while pregnant and thinking it was gestational. So I think, and I already know like from, medical background, like when you're in your second trimester, when you're in your second trimester and pregnant, you're immunosuppressed and you are more likely to have viruses impact your immune system. Specifically in the second trimester, there's some weird links to
when viruses have more impact during pregnancy.
Yes. Oh. I remember learning that in school, and I don't know from my research yet, and I haven't really, personally talked to people, but I remember going on Reddit and seeing all these people who were like, yes, I'm a type 1 after getting COVID while I was pregnant. And like all of the people that were like, yes, me too. Like this is definitely a thing. And even like my cousin knows like 2 other girls in their 30s who were pregnant and then got type 1. It's just like a weird, like after COVID, like within a month of COVID. Love for more people to send me information on that because I'm fascinated with like if there's going to be more to come with that. But I already had thought that there was something weird with the timing and the possibility of that. And yeah, that's my best guess anyway of.
So I've spent 0 days in medical school, and I want everyone to keep in mind that my real focus of study in high school was baking. I have been making this podcast for a decade now and talking to a lot of people. And I have the experience of my daughter being diagnosed right after Coxsackie. I have the experience of researchers coming on here who are working on new drugs who have brought up like the Coxsackie virus. There was a gentleman on here that said, I'd love to make a vaccine for Coxsackie because I think if we could stop kids from getting Coxsackie, we might put off them getting type 1 diabetes. A virus can often precede a diagnosis, but the idea here is I don't know, obviously, because I make a podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't believe, based on anything I've heard so far, that a virus just walks into your body and goes, here, let me pull some wires off this pancreas and it doesn't work anymore. Like, I think it's more like, your body has an immune reaction. That reaction gets misguided, hits your beta cells in your pancreas. You have type 1, but that you were very likely predisposed to that to begin with and probably had autoantibodies pointing to type 1 diabetes before the virus got there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if being pregnant makes you more or less. By the way, I did try to look while you were talking, and I so inarticulately typed it. Our friend here, ChatGPT, said, it sounds like you're trying to ask, which I was like, oh God, how horribly did I type that out? But like, is there a trimester that's more, impacted by viruses? First trimester is a critical period when the embryo's organs are forming. Exposure to certain viruses, Zika, rubella, during this window carries the highest risk of major structural birth defects or miscarriages about the baby. Fetal growth and maturation problems are predominant in the third trimester. Viral illnesses late in pregnancy are more likely to cause preterm labor, low birth weight, neonatal infections rather than congenital malformations. The flu they use as an example, influenza infection. Now, in the second trimester, it says organ systems are maturing. Viral infections can still cause problems, growth restrictions, neurodevelopment issues, absolute risk of the major structural anomalies like Zika. But what about for the mother?
I know. I'm curious. And I honestly am so bad at using ChatGPT. I could probably ask them a lot more.
If I could go back to college right now, I'd go back to college to learn how to talk to ChatGPT. I think it's going to be a job.
Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying. I'm just curious, like, in terms of like, it flips you into like, the virus itself doesn't cause it. Yeah. I want to be careful of what I'm saying.
Here we go. Hold on. Wait. Second trimester, maternal risk still relatively moderate. Many women tolerate common viral illnesses fairly well. However, some viruses, notably influenza and SARS-CoV-2, can begin to show higher rates of pneumonia or hospitalization compared to non-pregnant women. What about type 1 diabetes? This thing's like, oh yeah, I forgot you make that podcast.
Yeah, it should know you by now.
Although it does sometimes. I ask it a question and I don't like say what I'm asking it. It's like, oh, you mean for this? Although the overall maternal risk for most viruses remain moderate in early pregnancy, women with type 1 diabetes, it's not leading me there. Can it? I'm just going to use the word cause, even though that's not what I mean. But I'm trying to get it to think that way.
And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's really looking into it yet. Like all of my things is anecdotal based on word of mouth and Reddit, which could be correlation and not,
Listen, this is ChatGPT. Yeah. This is the 03, the deep research version. Some viral proteins share structural similarities with B-cell antigens. When the immune system mounts an antiviral response, cross-reactive T cells or antibodies may also target B-cell proteins. I think that's what I said earlier. They call that molecular mimicry. Bystander activation, viral infection of the pancreas or nearby lymph node system tissue can induce local inflammation. Cytokines and chemokines released in the process may non-specifically activate autoreactive T cells that were previously dormant. Certain viruses can infect and directly destroy B cells, beta cells. The resulting release of beta cell antigens can further fuel an autoimmune response. That's called direct cytolysis. Chronic low-grade infection, persistent viral infections in the gut or the pancreatic islets can maintain a smoldering inflammatory milieu, gradually eroding B-cell mass over months and years. It says here, viruses implicated in type 1 onset. Enterovirus, so a key example would be Coxsackie. The second one is rubella. Third, mumps. Fourth, CMV. What is that? Cytomegalovirus.
Yep.
Rotavirus. And SARS-CoV-2. That's the ones that it listed. And I didn't ask it to implicate viruses. It came back with that on its own. So, I mean, listen, again, not a doctor, but people get viruses, their body goes wonky. If they're predisposed to type 1, they end up with type 1 diabetes sometimes. So would you have gotten type 1 diabetes if
not being pregnant?
You weren't pregnant, if you didn't get COVID, maybe later?
I think this is my theory. And like I said, this is just my own. And I guess I can't say it's a theory, just my own theory is I just feel like I was in a state of immunosuppression by being pregnant. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know enough. I'm not like an immunologist. For some reason, I've internalized, whether that's true or not, and like I said, I'd love to learn more about it, that if I wasn't pregnant while I had COVID, it would not, the double effect would not have.
I understand your thought process. I'll just tell you this, like, you're probably getting type 1 at some point.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Batman's parents get killed in every universe where you hear the Batman story. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, totally.
At some point, like, I try to think about this for Arden. By the way, this again is not what we would call technical, but this makes me feel better about Arden.
Yeah.
So it sucks that she got it when she was 2, right?
Totally.
But if she didn't get Coxsackie when she was 2, she got the flu when she was 4. Would she have gotten diabetes then? Like, would it have happened when she got like another thing when she was 10? Like I don't know. The kid's got autoimmune issues. Like, this isn't her only one, So,
yeah.
I mean, at some point, it feels like it makes sense that she was going to get type 1. Now, would I have preferred she got it when she was 15 or 30 or 2 or 9 or 35 or 63? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think it matters once it's happened. Like, it's fun to talk. Fun's the wrong word.
Yeah.
It's interesting to talk about, but like, it's all academic because getting diabetes, type 1 or type 2, sucks no matter what age you are.
Yeah. And I mean, but COVID, I'm curious if COVID is what did it for me, which is what I, based on the list of it whether or not I was pregnant or not. It was such a weird virus in the world, that I'm curious to know if another virus would have done it. And I guess I'm not convinced of that. But because I already was 32, Yeah,
but listen, I interview people every day that are 33, 34, 37, 40, 45, 62. They get type 1 diabetes.
And I think COVID was what did it for me based on the timing. It could have been something else.
You might have a little bit of my magical thinking. I used to think like, if I can make it to this age, then this won't happen. If you get to that age, then that wasn't happen. If you're married for this long, you don't get divorced. If you do, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think like that?
And it's impossible to really know, but it is fascinating to think through.
Can I ask a big question?
Totally.
Why does it matter?
It doesn't. I just think like it's more for purposes of
educating who?
Yeah, I'd love to know the studies. Like, I would just love to know, to understand COVID more, because I think we have so far to go with that.
Oh, yeah.
And
for sure.
We were seeing things in COVID that just weren't true for other viruses in a lot of ways. And it just was such a weird virus. And, and so I'm just like, man, I have not seen too many people talk about COVID and type 1 diabetes. But I was like, I think even early on, I was like, I think there's a link. Now, could I have gotten it later or from something else? Very possibly. But at least what I thought did it at that point was the combination of being COVID. And I have no other autoimmune issues. Who knows if I'm going to get one? I hope not. But
I'll ask a couple of weird, difficult questions here. So when you're having these thoughts for 3 years, but the world's not letting us talk about COVID, is that hard? Like, because you want... No, it's you end up on Reddit talking about it then.
I don't know. It was a weird number. Like I said, I have a weird number of women in my same position.
I'm saying, like, if you were at work and you saw a doctor and you were like, hey, man, we've known each other a long time. Let me ask you a question. You think this COVID gave me type 1 diabetes? Are you worried that he's looking back at you going, this one, I didn't realize she had a tinfoil hat? Or
no, I was no. And I was I had a lot of questions like, are you sure it's not the vaccine? And I was like, you think the vaccine gave you COVID? And I was like, well, it didn't really line up with the timing didn't make sense for it to be the vaccine. If and I'm not anti-vax at all, but just was like, I had the vaccine in December. It wouldn't, based on the limited stuff I know. Like, I was like, I don't know. I don't have any clue. But it seems to be that it makes more sense timing wise with all of a sudden my body shutting down. But who knows how long that was brewing.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I don't think we should be saying anti-vax anymore.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
I think there's like a way to I don't know.
Totally. And there's dangerous too. There's dangerous to vaccines. I always tell my patients, like every medication has side effects.
I just think every conversation deserves us to be able to talk about all of the variables without like labeling something. Like, if that was my point, like, were you worried that like somebody would prejudge you?
No, I actually never expected to feel judged because I feel like I'm very pro,
just open-mindedness. So you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, yeah. No, I actually never thought judgment would come into the picture, because I am a healthcare provider. I generally follow CDC's recommendations. And I'm just like, we were seeing all these things. We were like, okay, we're seeing diabetes get worse and hospitalizations increase and a lot of other things. And like, I'm not an expert at all with COVID, but I was just like, it just seems to be such a weird timing. And then hearing and seeing some other people in my same position, I was like, weird.
Yeah. No, I mean, I take your point. Like, if you fell out of bed today and tomorrow your legs started hurting and you didn't think, I wonder if this is because I fell out of bed, that would be an odd thing to skip over. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's not, and by the way, maybe that's not what happened, but it would be weird to just ignore it and pretend that it didn't. Like, it didn't have a possibility.
Then I also think maybe it's like the red Jeep theory, like, unless you're looking for it, you're never going to see it.
Sure.
And so, that's why I just throw it out there.
That's why I'm continuing the conversation, because like in the end, you're never going to know.
No, well, yeah, maybe not. But I'm very curious. And like I said, in like retrospective data in the future, if they're going to, because up until you said that, I do know in the past the lists of viruses that had not caused, careful with the wording, but were more likely to influence a type 1 response. But COVID, when I was in the middle of it, they hadn't put that on the list,
No, I mean, obviously, like, stuff about COVID is still, like, listen, my wife has long COVID.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's horrible.
I mean, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it really genuinely horrible. Like, it's got you reading, I'm reading research. It's like, hey, I actually went to my wife the other day. I said, you should try nicotine gum or a patch or something. And she's like, what now? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I saw a thing.
Yeah.
Once you're 2 years into a problem and nobody's helping you, you're down to, I saw a thing. Like, why don't we see if we throw this at the wall if it sticks?
Yeah.
And that's a place to be. With your health.
I mean, at this point, I'm just fully type 1, and I just am curious as to like the could I do anything differently? Probably not, and it doesn't keep me up at night. It's just more like because everyone asks why, why, and I'm like, like this is all I can point to of a weird grouping of things I know to be, true, kind of coming up against me, causing me anyway to have what they thought was gestational diabetes.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I also wondered if this factored in. I don't think it did, but I had this most severe, like around the same time I was diagnosed with gestational, I had this crazy rib pain, which I think was something called like intercostal neuralgia. I'm not sure, but it was like my nerves were trapped in like this one dermatome, which is like a couple ribs that like went from my mid back around to my right like side. And my ribs would pop in and out even. So like it would feel awful. And I was in so much pain. And so I was like, is there like, I don't know, do I have a pancreatic mass or something like that? That could be causing my, because my pain is right there.
Can I ask you a question though? Like I just realized a little while ago that this was during your first pregnancy, because when you said I've only ever been pregnant or breastfeeding with type 1 diabetes, I thought, God, is she breastfeeding a 4-year-old? But I didn't say that. And then because I don't want to be judged.
Oh yeah.
But then I realized you meant like you were pregnant and then
breastfeeding. And then I got pregnant with my second while I was breastfeeding.
And then breastfeeding. Yes. That's.
Yeah.
But how did that happen? So you were newly type 1 and breastfeeding. Your husband was like, let's do it again.
Yeah, well, yeah, funny. Well, actually, so like...
And you didn't run? Like you weren't like, get away?
Well, after I determined, okay, the rib pain was awful. It wasn't because of, like I had a pancreatic mass. I did some ultrasounds and or anything like that. Never really figured out what it was, but it was a little ironic that everyone was telling me to like go exercise when I like couldn't walk. I had to actually leave my job early. I was in so much pain when I was a brand new diabetic, things like that. My doctor finally believed me, was like, we're going to put you on shots. We're going to put you on injections because this does seem severe. And then my instructions, for my injections were, if it's under 15 carbs, don't have to bolus for it, which I'm sure might be true for gestational diabetics, but, definitely not true for...
Wasn't working out for you that way?
Yeah, type 1 diabetic. Yeah, exactly. And do a night snack. Don't bolus for that, but like before you eat, like eat something protein heavy. Like mixed with protein. But the instructions I was like given on like in my guidelines and that I found on like Instagram was like mix raisins with nuts. Like that's a great bedtime snack. You know what I mean? I'm like, now if I knew now, I knew that. I was just like eating a bag of raisins with nuts, but like right before I went to bed, and didn't like bolus for that at all.
I just want to know, did you love the raisins and nuts, or were you like, I can't believe I have to eat these?
No, I just was like doing it because I thought they're like, I was supposed to control my blood sugar. And then because I was now on injections, and I was finger pricking. Now knowing now what I'm like, I'm just like, oh, thank God I survived that and my baby survived that.
The doctor was trying to keep down big spikes at meals and didn't want you getting low overnight, because that's how he thought about gestational women who he gave insulin to.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that makes sense. But it's just like, under 15 carbs, your body should be able to handle it, So I think just my finger sticks were just wildly inaccurate, depending on when I checked, like I was following the 1 to 2 hour like postprandial glucose check. Like after you eat, you do your checks, and in the morning and stuff like that. And I feel like I never could figure it out, likely because like what I know about my body now is I'm way more likely to spike like 5 to 6 hours later. I wasn't checking then. He was really well intentioned, called me even on the weekends to see how I was doing, which was very nice. I don't think that was like, I think he was just all like, this lady, because I was in so much pain too. Like I cannot underestimate, like that was the most pain I've ever been in my life. So I was like in so much pain, couldn't barely like walk. And then I was trying to figure out injections for the very first time. Now that I understand what like a high blood sugar or a low blood sugar feels like, was just wildly different and so much more empathy. Like I remember being at IKEA and having my first low because I was just newly on injections, maybe first week. And I took them seriously, but I was just like, well, I can just eat. What I didn't understand with a low is how much your brain slows down to the point where like even trying to remind yourself to eat is like swimming through like mud or something like that.
When you're low.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nobody was with me, and I was just like very pregnant, and I was just trying to buy some stuff, probably for the nursery at IKEA. And I remember being like, oh, I feel really shaky. First time ever feeling that way. Let me check my blood sugar. I remember it being like in the 30s.
Oh, jeez.
And being like, I think that's low. That sounds low. I know that's low. Let me see if I can keep checking out of I'm in line to check out. And I was like, okay, I think this is bad enough. I need to go to the cafeteria, because I wasn't bringing snacks by myself. Like I wasn't really like with gestational, I guess you are on insulin, but like I wasn't prepared for really being low quickly.
Yeah.
I wasn't bringing it.
Or how far the Goofernurker is from the cashier at IKEA, I bet. That was probably a problem. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I got a chocolate bar in the line, and I remember sitting down. I don't know. I think I was at the same table for hours, but I remember because I just couldn't get up. And I do remember being like, unwrap the chocolate bar. Like my brain was like stringing one thought to the next thought, like unwrap it, put it in your mouth, chew it. And I was like, after I bounced back, I was like, oh my gosh, I understand now how dangerous sometimes it is for you to be alone with low blood sugar, because you are thinking so slowly. Like if it gets low enough, now I, can usually nip it in the bud before that happens. But that was just my first ever instance of that happening.
Was that fear after you got through that and looked back on it? Did you live fearfully after that?
No, I didn't know enough to be fearful.
How is that? What kind of a nurse are you, Jane?
A PA, physician assistant.
You're a physician's assistant, right?
Yeah.
You work in emergency sometimes?
Emergency medicine, yeah.
Okay.
So I have all my own patients, like they're mine completely. Like I don't know laws elsewhere, but like, I manage their care, and I treat diabetic patients all the time, and to that point, I just mean like, it is different being the person going through it than being like, yes, I would assign that number. Another point to your earlier question of how it changes my practice is I would have probably shot that person with D50, dextrose 50% solution, and spiked up their blood sugar because I was more comfortable with being high. Because way more, in the ER, we don't want it to be that low.
Yeah, but for people listening who are thinking, how can she not understand this if that's her job? Like, tell them why that is. It's not because you're like dopey or you didn't pay attention in school or you don't care or anything like that. Like explain like what the lead into your job is that lets you be so good at so many things. I watch the Pitt. I know what's going on.
Oh yeah. I'm watching that right now.
Of course you are. That leads you to be so valuable in people's emergency care.
Uh-huh.
But then you get to something like this that every person listening to this is like, oh my God, I know that. How did she not know that?
But I guess think back to the very first time, and maybe a lot of people are diabetic when they're kids, but like nobody else knew more than I. Like it was the very first time I'd ever used injections on myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't know my own body pattern. Like I guess in the ER, we're notified of a low blood sugar, and we just treat it with either, like now I'm much more likely to treat it with just orange juice, or like I don't want to make them spike high. So I'm not trying to load them with the sugary stuff.
So is it that professionally it's a thing you're trying to stop, not a thing you're trying to understand?
I don't manage it on a day-to-day basis either. So that's a difference. I'm not, that was a huge difference of being like, no, I'm trying to understand it. I guess I don't really understand. Maybe I don't understand your question because
I think you've been in this profession for so long, you're not following my question. Imagine if you went to get new tires.
Yeah.
And when you were done, your tires were on the ground, not on the car. And your car was sitting on the ground on its wheels. And the guy goes, you can leave now. Like, wouldn't you think, how could you not understand so completely this simple task of putting tires on my car? I think that's how people with diabetes feel when they're at a hospital and nobody seems to understand what's going on.
You mean from the healthcare perspective, like why, like...
Yes, not you personally, you professionally. How come you don't understand professionally?
As a patient, when you were like, why hadn't I understood at that point that I was type 1? Is that what you were?
No. Like, I didn't realize I should have snacks to do when I'm walking around. I didn't know all that stuff.
Totally.
Like, I guess I'm putting myself in the perspective of people listening.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that they're thinking, I don't get how a person in the medical field wouldn't know this. Like I know that.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, well, remember when it was your first week, but yet I am in the medical field. Well, I guess because I'm only treating the emergency side. So I'm pretty good at like, I'm not going through people's first weeks of diabetes, I guess, even though I know the base stuff. But with insulin, I didn't take insulin as seriously as I do now. Like I know it can lead to lows. I know it can lead to highs. The lack of it can lead to highs. Too much of it can lead to lows. But didn't have the ins and outs of all of the insulin knowledge I know now.
Yeah.
And I don't think and now I know how dangerous of a drug it is.
Yeah, I think people who are not involved in healthcare professionally, they make a generalized assumption that anything healthcare related, the healthcare person is going to understand.
Oh, and that is one of my big takeaways is how little, I mean, at least from the ER perspective, we do not know how to manage diabetes or type 1 diabetes.
Right.
When you come in, like we do not.
I did a cold wind episode last year where an ER nurse with type 1 said to me that she'd be safer having a seizure at my house than in the ER she works in.
I don't have an interesting seizure. How come? Oh, like a diabetic seizure.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, you would
know what to do.
Handle it better than the people I work with.
Because in ER we know, an inch deep and a mile wide, and we don't know the mile deep about diabetes that you get to know when you're diabetic yourself.
See, that's why we're having this conversation, Jane, because you just put it so perfectly. No one's ever said that before, but that exactly highlights my point. We understand things an inch deep and a mile wide. That really is that a thing people say in the ER?
I don't know, actually. I have thought it about, I'm sure somebody has said it to me at one point.
Well, guess what? Yeah. I think that was incredibly valuable for people to hear. Seriously.
Yeah. And I'm constantly trying to now, diabetic patients are my favorite now. And I'm constantly trying to talk to I have my coworkers, PAs or MDs, sit in with me going through some, and you don't have a time for this always in the ER, but going through what I'm talking to patients about so that they can learn. I could get somebody stabilized fine, but to actually educate them, I think the problem is, in the ER in which I work in and a lot of ERs in America, that is their primary care. We are seeing people repetitively, and if we don't do better, and like I said, there's a lot of constrictions with that. It's definitely not all the ER's fault, but just they're just not getting the tools they need from resources or knowledge wise or who knows what to manage this. And we are their primary care office, so I need to do a better job of trying to give them more tools.
I mean, it's awesome that, I hate to say this, but people say this all the time, I wish somebody famous would get sick so they'd fix it. Or it's nice that a person in healthcare got this. So now your understanding will continue to grow. You'll work around people. You'll help them understand more. There'll be a lot of good stuff that comes out of this. Oh, yeah.
Scott, you'd be shocked at what my coworker said to me.
No, go ahead.
Even though we treat type 1 all the time, they're couldn't get it. When I became type 1, which I'm sorry, I keep getting, haven't even gotten there. But they have been well, does it go away?
Really? A nurse asked you that?
PAs, doctors. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Be well, will it go away?
Let's fast forward because I'm on a bit of a time crunch today. So let's fast forward to.
Yeah, by actual, what happened?
Yeah. Because you said at the beginning, I had to force people to believe that I had it.
Well, and it's, I guess, just interior, how did you not know? Often is how did you not know as a healthcare provider too? It was a traumatic birth, I guess, and I lost a lot of blood. But anyway, my body was doing a lot of stuff in my birth. And so they did one finger stick, or I did really. I don't know if they checked, but I did my finger stick and it was 85 and I reported it to them. They're great. Congratulations, you no longer have diabetes. And I ate a burger and fries and I was excellent. This is great life.
What happened? Did you let out all the blood that had the glucose in it? You said you lost so much blood. I figured you lost so much blood, they replaced it with blood that didn't have glucose in it and then tested your blood sugar. I'm hey, you're 85.
I wonder about that too. I can't remember with the timing. I was so out of it. Yeah. I had I lost so much blood. I hemorrhaged and it was really it was really traumatic. I could only tell how bad it was going when they called in the ICU team, and then they kept saying, and we're going to give her TXA, which is the blood stopping medication that's really toxic, and we're going to give her some antibiotics, which I know they were only going to do if I ripped through my rectum, which I did, And I was okay, this is going bad. At least my daughter seems to be fine. That was the entirety of my diabetes care. I don't even remember if the glucose was before or after the blood.
Okay.
I don't remember at what point. That's a fever dream a little bit to me. But I just remember thinking, everyone has told me I had one of the hardest gestational cases I've heard of. And when I gave birth, I looked at that placenta and I was I'm so glad you're out of my body. I'm done with this. And then why did I not know in the next 3 months? And I just, my daughter really, things I don't know that I'm curious, if maybe I'll chat GPT about it sometime. It's just my daughter had really bad colic. I was up all night, as many newborn moms are, but all of the things that you would think, I still have diabetes. How can I not figure it out? Especially having just had diabetes. I was extremely thirsty while I was breastfeeding. I was extremely hungry while I was breastfeeding. I was losing weight while I was postpartum, and breastfeeding, and I was like exhausted and tired and irritable. I also had a really hard time breastfeeding at first. I do not know to this day how my body did it. Like I was on this insane pump. One of my friends was a lactation consultant.
Yeah.
And she had me on this power pumping, like 20 minutes for every 2 hours for 2 weeks. I was pumping to try to get my breast supply up because I was extremely dehydrated. Now that I know that I was the diabetes never went away, I was still trying to breastfeed.
I don't think people give women nearly enough credit. And I think women get a lot of credit for, especially around making a baby. But like my rectum rips, everything's over. I don't care. Somebody's like, take care of the baby. I go, the baby. My
exactly
tore open.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I bled for 3 months and I was wondering why I wasn't healing. And they're like, had me go to a specialist. They're like, wow, you're really not healing.
I would have been like, you still tried to breastfeed. I would have been like, give that kid a piece of lettuce. See if I can eat that.
Couldn't even like sit for a long time because I was like trying to heal down there, and I was like 3 months of bleeding, and it was like, no wonder I wasn't healing because my sugar was so high. I can't believe my body produced breast milk. I must have put it through the worst states because when 3 months took me 3 months. I finally was like, this is weird. I brought out my old glucometer from under the sink 3 months postpartum. I checked my blood sugar and my fasting was 440.
What made you check it?
It was the night before I went out to a really nice dinner. And I remember everyone being like, man, I'm full. And I was just like, I could eat everyone's plates plus more. And I also was like, we had a party and I was like eating frosting out of a tube. I was like so hungry and so craving sugar.
Gotcha.
And but my thought was, man, breastfeeding's wild. I'm apparently burning a lot of calories once again, and I am like really hungry.
I would have stopped eating completely, trying not to go to the bathroom. I just want to say.
Sorry. So I just was like, exactly, like all of these things that I'm like, I could just explain that mentally by postpartum, but I was just like, in breastfeeding, I still, my poor body. And then my fasting was 440. And then it was amazing to try to prove to people, even though I wasn't pregnant, that I was type 1. Because like the nurse practitioner at One Medical, like I said, I have many friends that work there, really like them as a company generally. I just think, wow, you've got ketones in your urine, you're fasting, your sugar right now is in the 300s. It was like the next day I got in with them. I had an old insulin pen I hadn't actually thrown away, weirdly. So I just injected myself with Atlantis because I was like, nope, I think I'm type 1. And I went in there and she's like, I think you probably were predisposed to diabetes and it never went away. And here's some metformin and come back in 3 months. And I was like, but this is my blood sugar. I know there's no body type, but I was like, I like that can, completely be type 2 or type 1 or anything. But when she was just once again trying to be like, do a good job with dieting and exercise, I am like very small at this point.
Yeah.
And like I lost too much weight postpartum than you really should, and so, man, I had to, and that's, man, getting an endocrinologist. I love my endocrinologist right now, but it was, at least in DC during COVID, 6 of the 8 endocrinologists at the GW practice had left. I think they just were exhausted. And like, I was asking people and they were like, the nurse literally told me they had enough. And so they were like, we're done. So they were rebuilding their entire endocrinology practice. I couldn't get an endocrinologist appointment to save my life. And I even was looking for private endocrinologists. They were like, we've filled our diabetic quota. I was like, I will prescribe this medication on my own if I need to, but would really love some help because I do not know what I'm doing, and I finally got a friend of a friend whose coworker used to have an endocrinologist who now lived in New Jersey, but the endocrinologist was still in DC. Texted her because she still had her number and was like, will you meet with my coworker's sister's friend? Because she is like a PA and she can't get an appointment. And like, would you please meet with her? And she has been the best endocrinologist ever. And I skipped her 9-month waiting list. I finally got my autoantibody test, was clearly type 1. I kind of wanted to be like, oh man, what a journey of me just like.
Listen, I wish that like misdiagnosis of all kinds are such a common story on here. I don't even like bat an eye at them anymore.
Yeah.
And even just like regular times, not regular times, like, COVID, not COVID. 8 years ago, somebody I texted me personally 3 weeks ago. Like it happens constantly. So I guess it's really hard to figure out. So.
Now I tell my patients, I'm like, I'm like, man, this doesn't seem right. Like, this doesn't seem like a type 2 presentation, or the problem is like, we don't order those autoantibody tests from the ER, and they just, for a bunch of reasons, it's really hard to get an endocrinology appointment, or their primary doctors don't know how to manage it. And at least in the ER, I'm always like, you need to try to figure out, like, has anyone told you could be type 1? Because please go and ask to get that testing because this is fishy, like there's too many fishy things. And I do that more now than ever. I'm just like, please try to figure out if you're LADA or type 1 or whatever, because like I'm seeing so many people to manage like a type 2 that I just wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And their diabetes is like most of the patients I see in the ER, they're not in control, like with their injection regimen or their metformin regimen. And often they're in the 300s, 400s, and who knows for whatever reason. But I'm like, I think you need insulin. I'm not the one to start you on that necessarily from the ER, but I also think you should be looking into these other things. And
does that scare you, sending them off thinking they might not get that help?
Oh yeah. Like I have a type 1 who in DKA last week who like doesn't have a Dexcom because of insurance problems. So I'm like, trying to reach out to social work to try to get some help, but just like, from the ER, it's like, I can't make follow-up appointments. Yeah. And so anyway, I want to in the future, like this has really inspired me. Like I want to do a diabetic management PA job. Maybe like, I know they're out there a little bit. My endocrinologist actually told me, she was like, hey, there's a PA job opening at this hospital. I think you should apply, but it was full-time. And I still really love the ER and I'd love to stay in the ER, but then do this like maybe part-time in the ER and then part-time do diabetic management. Cause I'm like, what I want to do is not what I can do.
What makes the ER attractive to you?
So you see a little bit of everything, and that's what I kind of love. And you never know if you're going to get something that's like really serious or just like a sore throat, or even something that looks like a sore throat ends up being like emergent,
Do you have ADHD?
No, I don't.
Like, I just like wondering if that feeds that thing for people.
I know.
Because it moves all the time.
I like juggling a lot. So I think, I don't know. It's actually, when I went into PA school, I thought ER was awful. I don't really love true emergencies. I was so scared. It's like, I don't know how I wound up here, honestly. It doesn't fit my personality completely. Like I was like, I don't really love people dying. And honestly, like I'm in a level 2 trauma. So unlike the Pitt, which is like level 1, I do see gunshot wounds and things like that, but I'm not like constantly, people are not falling apart on me every day. It's a lot of like pancreatitis and, appendicitis and people you can talk to.
A friend of mine's kid did a year at Hopkins in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, I got to leave.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I asked her why. And she said, I no longer am upset when I see somebody shot. And I'm worried about myself for that reason.
Honestly, I understand that. Like we have a guy I'm training right now and he's so like, but she's in pain. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's so sweet. But yeah, I'm like, everyone's in pain here, All of the like veterans look at each other and we're like, man, we're callous a little bit.
That's she didn't want to feel callous. So I get that. Also, then she became a travel nurse and her life is like awesome now, as far as I can tell. So
yes, that is really nice. Yeah. I made pump setting adjustments. Like a patient who I had a patient who was vomiting even, I think last week too, type 1. And I was like, well, what pump are you using? Do you think you should lower your basal right now? Because you're vomiting, not able to tolerate a lot, let's lower your basal. And she's like, I've never done that on my own.
Yeah.
She didn't know how to do it. And I was like, you've been in type 1 diabetes. She was in her 50s or 60s. And I know like that generation of diabetics, have just been through the most change.
Yeah. It's not as generational as you would hope, by the way. Like I found myself saying the other day in a recording, if you just understood how insulin works, the timing and amount, that's most of it. But if you really want to succeed long-term, you have to become comfortable making changes to your settings.
Yes. And honestly, that's what I feel comfortable doing that generally because I think about it through a practitioner's mindset. But I've learned a lot from your podcast
awesome.
As well. And I told my endocrinologist about your podcast. I tell my patients to listen to it. I'm like, you need to listen to that, like if you really want to get good, listen to these episodes, things like that. And I'm still trying to get good, at it. But I get frustrated wanting it to be perfect still,
Where's your A1C at? Will you share?
My most recent one was 5.9. I don't know if this is true for you, but I tend to trust my Clarity app a little bit more than I feel like I do my blood, which is not probably accurate, but I am like, well, so my Clarity is usually like 6.1. So I go between like 5.8 to 6.1.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and how's your variability? You low all the time, high all the time?
No. And and once again, I was pregnant for like over a year and a half of the last 3 years. I'm diabetic. So it's also like just trying to figure that out. So I was more strict when I was, pregnant than my A1C now, which is just breastfeeding. Let me look up my Clarity right now, actually, just to see what it is. Yeah. I'm curious to know what it is recently. I don't think it's been good recently because I just go and making me log in. I don't remember.
Do you feel like you're just learning now, like you're through the fog of the pregnancies and the breastfeeding and everything, like you starting to feel like a person again? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've luckily felt like that for a while. I think I learn more things though every day. Like my endocrinologist, I think, is like, wow, people that are listening to your podcast are very generally motivated. Like I'm sure you talk to people who are like trying their best, but at least most of the diabetics I come in contact with, and my endocrinologist does, just from what she usually says, she's like, you are doing far better than any of my other patients. I think you need to like back off, like you need to like calm down a little bit. And I'm like, I want to do like 13 different pump settings in my,
Which pump are you using?
t:slim.
Are you using Control IQ?
Yes, I do Control IQ, but I like to, and I went on t:slim actually based on, what my endocrinologist had recommended. She said the algorithm at the time, 3 years ago, who knows, she said it was far better. And also the Dexcom at the time didn't have bolusing from your phone, which was important to me.
Not Dexcom.
But
what do you mean?
I could bolus to the t:slim from my phone.
But you couldn't from what other pump?
At the time, if this is true, with the Omnipod.
Omnipod, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't think they had like the Control IQ function yet for Omnipod, right? Like that's more recent.
Omnipod 5? Is Omnipod 5 3? You might have gotten there before it came out.
Yeah. Like the Omnipod 5 came out after I had gotten this pump. So I'm interested in it. But so far I've liked the t:slim. I'm in Control IQ a lot. For a while I was in sleep mode all the time, which I know they've said to do in pregnancy. And just like another one of your podcasters I listened to, who I was like, well, this seems to be smart. Like, why don't I just keep in sleep mode all the time? And then I realized that Control is not as good.
Right. Have you listened to Control IQ Ninja?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of doing, I'm halfway through those.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so, I'm interested in those. And so I'm in Control IQ, but like yesterday I switched into manual because I was like, what I can't do on the t:slim, but you can do on the Omnipod is I don't love that I can't increase my temp basal when I'm on Control IQ. I want both. And now you can, as of like just a couple months ago, but I haven't updated it yet. But you can do that from what I believe on the Omnipod is you can increase your temp basal to like, 125% while you're on the control function.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Because you couldn't do that up until very recently on the t:slim.
They just updated the software.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just did it for t:slim too, which I'm excited about. But because I would go back and forth all the time between being like, oh, I'm going to lower my basal or I'm going to increase my basal and do an extended bolus or, things like that you can't do being on Control IQ. But like last night, I did that and then forgot overnight to put myself back in sleep mode. So then, luckily I didn't spike high, but I was like, woke up being like, why am I 160?
So you're using the algorithm, but you got your fingers in it a lot. And,
I do. And so my endocrinologist is like, let's make this so that there's a little bit less work for you. But I'm like, yeah, but I want to just get better.
Do you think you couldn't do that? You don't think you could do a 5.9 with less work?
I think I can. I just think I'm learning. And like, honestly, your podcast and hearing from people that have figured it out is more information than I've been able to get anywhere else.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm glad. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah. Listen, you got to keep going through those algorithm episodes because you'll get better at it. Yeah.
And I already have and it's giving me like, I'm already pretty bold in what I feel like I can do, but I feel like I'm like, oh yeah, like this isn't, once again, my endocrinologist is amazing. She just is so great. But she also is managing everything out there and she doesn't know the nitty gritty of the things you talk about on your podcast, so.
And that's something.
She wants me to back off a little more because often my lows will lead to highs because they'll suspend and I'm always trying to balance doing too much.
You're not letting it work. You're not letting the algorithm work.
Not letting it work for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where sometimes I'm like, I should just be on manual because I almost have an inability to let it go, but.
Those two kids aren't keeping you busy enough?
Yeah, I know. Well, honestly, I'm like, man, what was my brain cells and what it gets devoted to. When people would ask me how having kids was, I was like, honestly, diabetes and trying to manage that is harder than having a newborn.
Jane, I have to go backwards for a second. So you have this birth. You find out you have diabetes after the birth. Your butthole rips.
Yeah.
You've hemorrhaged.
Yes.
And then how long is it before you're like, you know what we should do? Let's have a second baby.
Kid. I know.
What happened?
My daughter had turned 2 when we started trying again. 2? No, Jeez. 1. Oh my gosh, 1. She turned 1 when we started trying because I wanted about 2 years apart.
Is this a little bit about you wanting to space them right? But is it also about your age a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Okay, that factors in. I was 32 when I got pregnant and just to turn 33 when I gave birth to my first. And then I was 34 and I just turned 35. They're just about exactly 2 years apart.
Yeah.
So that factors in. I'm trying to think through whether I want a third now. I just don't know.
Seriously?
But Yes, I know. And honestly, it's like, I'm not even someone who I was like, maybe I won't have kids. I wasn't like, for sure I want to be a mom.
What happened?
So I don't know.
How did the butthole thing not stop you? Seriously.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Luckily my second, I know this is what happened. My second child was an angel baby.
Oh.
And he is he's a little hard sleeper now, but like my first was like, and once again, I would love for ChatGPT or somebody to be like, from the little bit I have researched, I don't believe my glucose, my hyperglycemia was amazingly really impacting my breast milk. I was like, looking back, I'm like, was my daughter just drinking like complete sugar in my breast milk or something?
I was wondering, is this like crappy milk she was getting?
And is this why she is starving in colicky or something like that? Does this have any correlation? And I looked at one thing, and I think I was just too stressed to really figure it out at that time. But I'd love to look into it again. Being like, from the one thing I looked into was like, no, somehow your body and the amazingness that it is will be able to keep hyperglycemia from really going into it's able to separate from breast milk or something.
Well, you're going to feel better here because our overlord says that it doesn't matter. I said, I was really blunt. I said, can an uncontrolled type 1 breastfeeding make subpar milk?
And what do they say?
No, having poorly controlled type 1 diabetes does not make your breast milk subpar. In fact, even when blood sugars are high or fluctuating, human milk remains remarkably resilient in its basic nutritional composition.
Yeah. That's the little bit I had heard too, and it made me feel so much better. Didn't understand, still don't understand the colic, but it made me feel so much better that I wasn't starving her or giving her something unknowingly for months. Yeah, but isn't it amazing though that the body can be that sick?
I agree.
And also produce.
Yeah, it says if your diabetes isn't perfectly controlled, your breast milk will still provide protein, fat, carbohydrates, and immune factors your baby needs.
It's just insane.
Go ladies. I knew those boobs were awesome for more than one reason.
And he was just easier pregnancy. I did not have the pain. I did not have to go, the birth was easier. It was all if I would have had her second, I'm pretty sure I'd be done.
Yeah, I see. And your husband's helpful and all, or do you know?
Oh, he's the best. He also was after one though, he was like, I'm good.
Oh, this is you now.
If you want a second, great. I think 2 sounds probably good, but especially now he's like, I'll leave that decision to you.
Oh, listen,
he's like, you can figure that out.
We got to wrap this up because I have a meeting soon, and I apologize for that. But
that was great.
I am 53. Mm-hmm. I have 2 kids, and 2 seems good to me.
Yeah, and I grew up with 2, boy and a girl. I'm super grateful for. And yeah, I don't know. I guess a lot of my friends have 3 kids. Maybe it's just feeling oh, that's what, I don't know. People keep telling me if I'm on the fence.
How much did it cost you to go to college? Think about that for a second.
Too much. Yeah.
Now times that by 2.
Yeah.
And then probably times it by 10 for 20 years from now.
Aren't you hoping though that it changes? I'm like, I know it could just get more expensive. Part of me is I just can't imagine it can get more expensive. So part of me just hopes it just changes.
Jane, you're still young. I didn't realize how young you were in your heart. That's lovely. No, it's going to get worse. Everything gets worse.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah. Have you lived through this week with the rest of us? Do you have a 401k?
Oh yeah. Luckily, I do the medicine. My husband does the finance. So
guess what?
I just read the news.
If he's paying attention to it and you're not, he's quietly banging his head against the floor right now.
And to top it off, he quit his job a couple of weeks ago and is going to start something on his own. So
you go over to him right now and say, I was thinking we should have a 3rd kid, and see if he doesn't throw you out a window.
I know. Exactly. Well, part of me did say, I'd really love for you to have a stable idea of what you're going to do in the future if we do decide to do this, because I also don't want to.
Kid's mommy left. Yeah. She's at the bottom of a lake at the park now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Listen, this wouldn't be the time to ask is all I'm saying. For anybody who's watched their money for the last week that has any kind of an investment is not busy going, we should do some stuff now
with off that decision. I'm definitely wanting to, I'm older and I want to space it out more, but I feel like, who knows?
What do you think 3 kids brings that 2 doesn't?
Good question. I don't think anything.
Are you hoarding babies? What's going on?
No, I think 3 kids maybe. No, I think I love watching them play together. That's great. No, it brings a lot of heartache. I think you're right. I think it brings a lot of it brings a hard couple of years. This is what I always said about kids. I don't necessarily want them right now. I want them when they're 20 or on my Thanksgiving table, And I feel like the future projection of being seeing that and being oh, I could just see what another person does sounds appealing to me. But now it just sounds incredibly hard because it already is hard. I'm not doing it really well right now. It's hard.
It's interesting. It really is. I mean, listen, I have hindsight. I've got, years, and my kids are 25 and 20 and stuff like that. And I can look back and tell you, I don't think another kid would have changed anything for me.
That's good to know. Yeah, interesting. Because I think that everyone else is like, oh, if you're thinking of 3, just do it. But that's all people have 3 kids. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm just saying it's possible that you're using the same collecting mentality as people with fish tanks. And I'm worried for you. They're like, I built this tank and it's running now and it's awesome. And I do like looking at it, but it was so much fun building the tank.
Also, I have a 2-bedroom apartment in DC.
Jesus, so God, it's like, you need one less kid.
Yeah, exactly. My kid actually, my son, who is a year and a half, has been in my closet for like the entire time. So was my gosh. So like, yeah, like, do we have the space? No, we don't have the space. We don't have the space or the money.
The third one's going to be like Harry Potter. He's going to live under the stairs.
Exactly. At least they're going to be used to little.
All right. Well, listen, things are expensive. Have two's enough. Trust me. You're fine.
And insure, I mean, man, the takeaway from my type 1 diabetic experience is type 1 is expensive and insurance is impossible. So yeah, I don't need more.
Also, have you, and I hate to say this, but have you given any thought to the idea that could your kids get type 1 eventually?
I have. I've listened to your podcast about somebody on your podcast who got their kid tested with the new testing that's out there. And I think I would think about that. At least I'll be and like to see if I can prolong if they are type 1 risk, to prolong that. I'm losing my words of what that is, but the infusion, to try to prolong that. So that sounds like I will be interested in like trying to do what I can to.
Yeah. You would consider like a TZL situation if that
Yes,
happened.
That's it. That was the TZL.
Right.
That was the word I was wanting. Yes. Yeah. A TZL situation, or in like, being aware of their symptoms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Type 1, nobody else in my family has it. So last I had checked, correct me if I'm wrong, like the risk is like 1 to 3% or something like that if your kid's getting it. And if you're the mom. I
mean, listen, your kids might never get type 1. Like, what I mean? Like they might. Does your husband have any autoimmune on his side of the family?
No, nobody.
Nothing like celiac or...
No autoimmune on either side of the family. Yeah, and I have no other health conditions either. So,
in my opinion, just from making this podcast, that should help a little.
Hopefully. I mean, that's what the data says. So I just got to go by statistics. Yeah. So my hope is, that not. But also, I mean, I used to think before your podcast, in some ways, I used to think like that would be my worst nightmare. Is not just having it, but having like my baby have it. And now I just feel like, okay, so many parents can do it. Like you are more equipped to handle it. Like, especially now, like with all the technology and everything, like it's not as bad as when I first got type 1 of thinking through my kids getting it.
That really makes me feel good. Thank you.
Yeah. It's true.
I'm glad you feel that way. It's awesome.
I do. I'm like, okay, these moms can do it, so it's not the end of the world.
Jane, I appreciate that. Thank you for doing this with me.
Oh, thank you for having me on it.
Did you have a good time?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. How did you find the podcast?
Great question. Oh, you read it? Yeah, read it.
Oh, yeah.
And Instagram. I read Instagram too. And I was not a Redditor until this. So it's like until just me looking up diabetic things. And I also I'm never on the computer because I work in the ER and I'm never like looking on things. So I also never use ChatGPT. I never, do things like that. I started just looking at Reddit to see what how type 1 diabetics are managing things. And then there were a lot of people pointed me to this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Reddit. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Awesome. All right. Hold on 1 second for me.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank the Eversense 365 for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast and remind you that if you want the only sensor that gets inserted once a year and not every 14 days, you want the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. 1 year, 1 CGM. The podcast you just enjoyed was sponsored by Tandem Diabetes Care. Learn more about Tandem's newest automated insulin delivery system, Tandem Mobi with Control IQ Plus technology at tandemdiabetes.com/juicebox. There are links in the show notes and links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Touched by Type 1 sponsored this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Check them out at touchedbytype1.org on Instagram and Facebook. Give them a follow. Go check out what they're doing. They are helping people with type 1 diabetes in ways you just can't imagine. Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate your loyalty and listenership. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Hey kids, listen up. You've made it to the end of the podcast. You must have enjoyed it. You know what else you might enjoy? The private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast. I know you're thinking, Facebook, Scott, please. But no, beautiful group, wonderful people, a fantastic community. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Of course, if you have Type 2 or you're touched by diabetes in any way, you're absolutely welcome. It's a private group, so you'll have to answer a couple of questions before you come in. We'll make sure you're not a bot or an evildoer. Then you're on your way. You'll be part of the family. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.